I've had some interesting exchanges with some people who've suffered trauma, and they credit their use of psychedelics, or whatever they want to call it, mind-altering substances, as their means of healing. And I don't dismiss that. I acknowledge that they have improved their lives, that they were worse off before using psychedelics, or at least the problem they had prior to psychedelics is no longer the problem they're dealing with. But I think to carry on this thought, to continue to wrestle with it, it'd be good to expand on what I've already shared with them. That's not the issue. The more important problem that should have been dealt with is now covered over with psychedelics. And for some, they are able to reach this healing. For others, I've watched plenty of them go from bad to worse, lose their minds. So what's the problem really that's being avoided on either side of the coin that lands when you flip for those psychedelics? The problem that needs to be dealt with, that isn't being dealt with, is a conversion, a true conversion that begins and continues to the end of your life, to be sanctified in the fire of Christ's love, in the fire of redemptive suffering. Chosen a quick fix, but really all of that suffering, all of that trauma, all of that urge towards suicide was an opportunity that was missed. It was an opportunity to die to yourself. And lest I be misunderstood as someone who's not sympathetic, I am sympathetic. I used to echo the same pitch. And I used to consider myself a survivor, if you will, from the same draw towards death. But that's all a lie. And I hope no one ever listened to that lie the way I did. So anytime I hear that lie, I will have no choice but to offer the way, the truth, and the life, which is Christ. So we all have our personal perspectives. And perhaps one personal perspective is not going to persuade the others. I know certainly when I championed drugs and psychedelics and I credited them for my survival, I wasn't going to be persuaded, because really I was in bondage to sin. And as long as I didn't surrender to God and enter into redemptive suffering and dive into the fire of Christ's sanctifying love, as long as I didn't step into purgatory, then I could choose which sins to keep and which sins did not serve me well. I still had the control, and that's what's lost in that suffering. Yes, I'm glad that you don't have the urge to kill yourself, but you could, instead of credit psychedelics, and it's still not too late, even if you do give it credit, you could say, these drugs are not necessary, but God is. And maybe the way you'll be able to say that is to think, did those drugs lead me to the way, the truth, and the life of Christ? Why is it that there rarely is this, if any, I've never heard of any credible experience, this vision, this appearance of Christ in the midst of this hidden secret? Well, if there isn't, then maybe Christ isn't welcome there, and maybe that's the realm of the demonic, which all exorcists I've listened to and learned from, true exorcists, serious, assigned, appointed exorcists of Christ Church, have all stated that that is the realm of the demonic. No gospel delivered in these psychedelics. Only self-healing, self-healing. And maybe you'll be tripped out and think you've discovered a whole new world as you climb to the top of that tower you're building for yourself, that tower that will eventually fall. Perhaps at your last hour, when you're dying and those visions don't appear, but instead reveal themselves and let you know that you danced with the devil. Fortunately, God, being God, can take our evil, our surrender to the world, the flesh, and the devil. He can take it, and from it, He can make good. But you have to turn away from that godless city. You have to turn away and turn towards Christ. Eventually, you have to get on your knees and surrender to the God who's holding you in existence, who holds psychedelics in existence, the God whose divine providence can take your foolishness and transform it into wisdom. Turn to Christ. Surrender to the fire of God's love. Correspond to God's grace. Conform to the will of God. Abide the fire.